Hello and welcome to the Amoralist Escape. I'm your host, Bunto Skiffler. I'd like to wish you all, firstly, a happy new year, and I hope your holiday season is going well. If I may, let me give some quick background bio. On this show, the Amoralist Escape, I started this show about 2 years ago with this format with four panelists, and we would discuss the subject. The very first show was Monolove versus Polylove, and I really was proud of that show. I felt it went really well. The following show was called Gender, Sex, and Evolution, something of that sort. Sexuality and Evolution, excuse me. And I had some misgivings about it. I never released it for public consumption, but this year I believe I should because, letting it settle after some time, I felt it did have some merit. So be on the lookout for that. For this show, for 2016, the Moralist Escape will have slightly different format, but it follows one that I'm sure you're familiar with, my show, Silent Dogfight. I'll go ahead and do a presentation of a subject, and then I'll open up the room to participants afterwards, after the presentation. Tonight's subject for this format will be anti-intellectualism, past and present. Just to inform our listeners, what is immoralism to me? What I believe it's something phenomena that exists within our society that we can look at without any sort of qualitative bias, any sentimentality affixed to it. So one important one that we realize nowadays is anti-intellectualism and bias. So it will have to do with a bit of history. Let's go back into where we first coined the term intellectual. Happened at the late 19th century in France with something called the Dreyfus Affair. I hope many of my listeners are history buffs, so we'll just dive right in. Thank you. Let me go ahead and present. Okay, the Dreyfus Affair was a political scandal that from its beginning in 1894 divided France until it was finally resolved in 1906. The affair is often seen as a modern and universal symbol of injustice and remains one of the most striking examples of a complex miscarriage of justice where a major role was played by the press and public opinion. The scandal began in December 1894 with the treason conviction of Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a young French artillery officer of Alsatian and Jewish descent. Sentenced to life imprisonment for allegedly communicating French military secrets to the German embassy in Paris, Dreyfus was imprisoned on Devil's Island in French Guiana, where he spent nearly 5 years. I'll go ahead and stick some commentary in, but I won't be windy about it, I promise you. Evidence came to light in 1896, primarily through an investigation instigated by Georges Picard, head of counter-espionage, identifying a French army major named Ferdinand Valsin Esterhazy as the real culprit of this espionage. After high-ranking military officials suppressed the new evidence, a military court unanimously acquitted Esterhazy after a trial lasting only 2 days. So, a quick interjection. We can see here where we can observe that it's a military society that France was currently under. They just came from a war against Germany, which they've lost, and so hence they put great value towards the military capacity of their country after the loss. The army then accused Dreyfus of additional charges based on falsified documents. So not only was the guy firstly his injustice was with no proof whatsoever. Now they've gone ahead and manufactured false things against him. Word of the military court's framing of Dreyfus and an attempted cover-up began to spread, chiefly owing to Jacques, I hope I pronounced it right, a vehement open letter published in a Paris newspaper in January 1898 by famed writer Émile Zola. Activists put pressure on the government to reopen the case. So yes, there was a conscience back then in their militaristic government that a certain class of people, the intelligentsia, found that it was injustice worth fighting against. Even though it did pertain to national security, ostensibly is the way as the government's message to its people. In 1899, Dreyfus was returned to France for another trial. The intense political and judicial scandal that ensued divided French society between those who supported Dreyfus, now called Dreyfusards, such as Sarah Bernhardt, Anatole France, Henri Poincaré, and Georges Clemenceau, and those who condemned him, the anti-Dreyfusards, such as Edouard Drumont, the director and publisher of an anti-Semitic newspaper, La Libre Parole. The next trial resulted in another conviction and a 10-year sentence, but Dreyfus was given a pardon and set free. Anti-Semitism is the hatred of Jews. Eventually, all the accusations against Dreyfus were demonstrated to be baseless, of course. In 1906, Dreyfus was exonerated and reinstated as a major in the French army. He served during the whole of World War I, ending his service with the rank of lieutenant colonel. He died in 1935. I find that just truly amazing that, you know, after such an injustice against a person, he went ahead and fulfilled what he felt was his life's message of being a military officer in the army that condemned him. I just find that well worth merit. The affair from 1894 to 1906 divided France deeply and lastingly into two opposing camps: the pro-army, mostly Catholic anti-Dreyfusards, and the anti-clerical pro-Republican Dreyfusards. It embittered French politics and encouraged radicalization. Okay, that last sentence. Okay, the beauty of YouTube, excuse me, everybody, the beauty of Wikipedia is that, you know, it's a collection of people may come together and write their encyclopedia pieces for affairs that happened in our history. That last sentence, let's take a look at it closely. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. Divided France deeply and lastingly into two opposing camps: the pro-army, which we could read that as just militaristic, mostly Catholic anti-Dreyfusards, mostly Catholic, that just in my mind means theocratic, and the anti-clerical, which of course means atheist, right? You have theism, atheist argument in France. Pro-Republican, which means, you know, liberty, brotherhood, equality, that no man is above the law system of government, Dreyfusards. It embittered French politics and encouraged radicalization. Okay. What exactly encouraged radicalization? Let's say a group of people confronted with what is obviously an injustice, who choose to ignore it and carry on with their view of reality. Okay? That is radicalization. Hold on a second. This part is the part in Wiki where I noticed they said that intellectualism was coined. Let me go ahead and read it to you, please. Thank you. The implications of this case were numerous and affected all aspects of French public life. In politics, the affair established the triumph of the Third Republic, which ended when the Nazis invaded in 1940 and became a founding myth. In the renewal of nationalism in the military, in religion, it slowed the reform of French Catholicism. Okay, the problem with that of what is there to reform? And Republican integration of Catholics. You know, one must choose to align themselves with a system of government of man, or one, I guess, could live in Iran, the theocracy that they have there. And in a social, legal, press, diplomatic, and cultural life, it was during the affair that the term intellectual was coined. The affair engendered numerous anti-Semitic demonstrations, which in turn affected the emotions within the Jewish communities of Central and Western Europe. These demonstrations had an impact on the international movement of Zionism by persuading one of its founding fathers, Theodor Herzl, that the Jews must remove themselves and found their own state. Makes perfect sense if you're within a society that gives multiple strikes against you just because of your racial makeup, your genetics. I can see why you would want to go to a place where that does not happen. Looking at what is an intellectual, what it means, it's a segment of society, in my estimation, that chooses method in science over what is irrationally based beliefs, what is a preference towards a bias. Okay? Now, when we look at demonstrations, these demonstrations had an impact on the international movement of Zionism. The affair engendered numerous anti-Semitic demonstrations. A demonstration is a group of people come together to make a social statement. It's a message, right? The basis of the political system is the message. What people are saying. What is said to the people. And so that brings me to the second part of my subject, which is propaganda, how it's utilized. Nazi propaganda. Nazi propaganda is what would you say, the start of modern day messaging towards the masses. If you look at it, that the system, a governmental system used to, induce the behavior that they wished. Let me go ahead and read the Wikipedia entry, please. The propaganda used by the Nazi Party in the years leading up to and during Adolf Hitler's leadership of Germany, 1933 to 1945, was a crucial instrument for acquiring and maintaining power and for the implementation of Nazi policies. The pervasive use of propaganda by the Nazis is largely responsible for the word propaganda itself acquiring its present negative connotations. Okay, looking at it from the Amoralist situation, we realize that, the underlying is that propaganda can be used as an instrument to induce the behavior of a mass of people. Okay, looking over here, we see Joseph Goebbels, the head of the Nazi Germany's Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, at that time haranguing, his listeners. How should we, am I saying that, is there any way we should accept propaganda? I don't know. It's something that occurs in a political system run by men. I mean, until we have some system where it's without bias, that's what I'm trying to get at, please. Perhaps by computers, run by computers, we would not have to deal with something that could be turned towards evil ends like propaganda. Evil ends, I can believe, is well within a moralist bounds. Okay, let me give you some insight that the leader of the Nazi Party that this people had. Nazi leader Adolf Hitler devoted 3 chapters of his 1925-26 book Mein Kampf, itself a propaganda tool, to the study and practice of propaganda. He claimed to have learned the value of propaganda as a World War I infantryman exposed to very effective British and ineffectual German propaganda. The argument that Germany lost the war largely because of British propaganda efforts, expounded at length in Mein Kampf, reflected then common German nationalist claims. Although untrue, German propaganda during World War I was mostly more advanced than that of the British. It became the official truth of Nazi Germany thanks to its reception by Hitler. Now, what does that paragraph mean? Okay, it's sensible to know that the German people in World War I were defeated militarily, and they weren't diverted by the message. But this leader of the second, of the Second World War, the Third Reich, Adolf Hitler, he believed that the message was just as effective as military means. That's something to keep in mind, at least as effective. Okay. Mein Kampf contains the blueprint of later Nazi propaganda efforts. Assessing his audience, Hitler writes in chapter 6, propaganda must always address itself to the broad masses of the people. All propaganda must be presented in a popular form and must fix its intellectual level so as not to be above the heads of the least intellectual of those to whom it's directed. The art of propaganda consists precisely in being able to awaken the imagination of the public through an appeal to their feelings, in finding the appropriate psychological form that will arrest the attention and appeal to the hearts of the national masses. One can say, from the writings of Hitler that he was not that unintelligent. The broad masses of the people are not made up of diplomats and professors of public jurisprudence, nor simply of persons who are able to form reasoned judgment in given cases, but a vacillating crowd of human children who are constantly wavering between one idea and another. So he had a low estimation of his public. The great majority of a nation is so feminine in its character and outlook that its thought and conduct are ruled by sentiment rather than by sober reasoning. Okay, I mean, What's not to like about that sentence? This sentiment, however, is not complex, but simple and consistent. It is not highly differentiated, but has only the negative and positive notions of love and hatred, right and wrong, truth and falsehoods. So right here we see what we can encounter many a time here in the great debate community, the black and white, the Manichaean outlook, the no gray area of thinking. We had some occasion of this last year with a person named Roy Montero. I believe he had a period there where, you know, people were talking about his, do you believe in God, yes or no, his like flowchart way of evangelism that failed miserably, of course. That's one thing that could be an indicator of anti-intellectualism. When they ever run across, you know, some sort of rote, some sort of flowchart way of thinking that does not allow for, you know, anything outside of their mean, of their median. Hitler in this case, I mean, you know, despite his characterization of traits, I mean, a person can have those mechanics of working with some sort of stereotypical traits, you know, provided that somehow his thinking and his logic, you know, can apply across a span. Except, you know, in this case, you know, he gave himself away in that last sentence. You know, this sentence, however, is not complex, but simple and consistent. If you look at the history of Hitler and the way that he ran the right, you can see, you know, indicators of this simple consistency that failed, of course, in the face of his politics and his military. Okay, as for the methods to be employed, he explains, propaganda must not investigate the truth objectively. And, insofar as it is favorable to the other side, present it according to its theoretical rules of justice. Yet it must present only that aspect of truth which is favorable to its own side. Now, here in our own community, we see that many a time in certain hangouts. The receptive powers of the masses are very restricted, and their understanding is feeble. On the other hand, they quickly forget. Such being the case, an effective propaganda must be confined to a few bare essentials, and those must be expressed as far as possible to stereotype formulas. Of course, these slogans should be persistently repeated until the very last individual has come to grasp the idea that has been put forward. Every change that is made in the subject of propagandist message must always emphasize the same conclusion. The leading slogan must, of course, be illustrated in many ways and from several angles. But in the end, one must always return to the assertion of the same formula. I believe the axiom attributed to Hitler was, you know, if you say a lie over and over again, people will believe it. You know, say the lie over and over again. I don't know if Goebbels said that or Hitler said it. When we encounter this sort of, you know, what would you say? Let me, how I can say it, where one avoids objective truth, you know, avoids evidence given in a scientific manner, and in fact tries to co-opt certain portions of evidence to just attack the method or attack the entire idea, the theory. Well, you know, its use is it's apparent. It becomes quickly propaganda for whatever their bias they're presenting. In this case, jumps to mind is something like, first and foremost, creationism, the creationist arguments that we encounter. And, you know, now the new kid on the block, as far as last year, I've noticed, has been the flat earther phenomena that we encountered. Let me go ahead and jump next to an interesting thing, you know, just trying to bring it to another argument that we encountered, the presuppositional argument. You can see has, you know, some modern origins in the postmodern movement. Let me go ahead and read this, the Sokal Affair, just a little bit of it. The Sokal Affair, also called the Sokal hoax, was a publishing hoax perpetrated by Alan Sokal, a physics professor at New York University and University College of London. In 1996, Sokal submitted an article to Social Text, an academic journal of postmodern cultural studies. The submission was an experiment to test the journal's intellectual rigor and, specifically, to investigate whether a leading North American journal of cultural studies, whose editorial collective includes such luminaries as Frederick Jameson and Andrew Ross, would publish an article liberally salted with nonsense if A, it sounded good, and B, it flattered the editor's ideological preconceptions. The article, transgressing the boundaries towards the transformative hermeneutics of quantum gravity, was published in the Social Text Spring-Summer 1996 Science Wars issues. It proposed that quantum gravity is a social and linguistic construct. At that time, the journal did not practice academic peer review, and it did not submit the article for outside expert review by a physicist. On the day of its publication in May 1996, Sokal revealed in lingua franca that the article was a hoax, identifying it as a pastiche of left-wing cant, fawning references, grandiose quotations, and outright nonsense, structured around the silliest quotations by postmodernist academics he could find about mathematics and physics. The hoax sparked a debate about the scholarly merit of humanistic commentary about the physical sciences, the influence of postmodern philosophy on social disciplines in general, academic ethics, including whether Sokal himself was wrong to deceive the editors and readers of social texts, and whether social texts had exercised appropriate intellectual rigor. Okay, what am I trying to do by introducing the Sokal Affair to this discussion on anti-intellectualism? Well, I would say, and put this forward as an observation, that it's impossible to be an anti-intellectual without, or at least, the tactic of anti-intellectual without some sort of bias. In this case, we have the postmodernist professors being hoaxed by a scientist. Interesting in this case, what for this example is that, I believe that the postmodernist professors were not lacking of any sort of intelligence, except they're completely slanted by bias, which was their undoing. The article. Sokal reasoned that if the presumption of editorial laziness was correct, the nonsensical content of his article would be irrelevant to whether the editors would publish it. It makes complete sense. What would matter would be ideological obsequiousness, fawning references to deconstructionist writers, and sufficient quantities of the appropriate jargon. Writing after the article was published and the hoax revealed, he stated, the results of my little experiment demonstrate, at the very least, yes, it was an experiment, that some fashionable sectors of the American academic left have been getting intellectually lazy. The editors of social texts liked my article because they liked its conclusion, bias. That the content and methodology of postmodern science provides powerful intellectual support for the progressive political project. Okay, what does that mean exactly, right? Okay, they apparently felt no need to analyze the quality of the evidence, the cogency of the arguments, or even the relevance of the arguments to the purported conclusion. Well, what the scientist means here is that, was social, what was it? Was Social Text, the magazine, a scientific document, a scientific magazine? Obviously, it failed the test when it was, confronted with something of such specious scientific quality that it went ahead and published it as something valid in the scientific realm. So right there, they accused him of being unethical. What is ethics? I mean, if it's not to reveal what is actual within our reality. Please remember that, listeners, whenever you're, maybe feel like Dr. Sokal and want to run a little experiment of what is actually scientific within our community. Okay, let me get to some conclusions. Number one, anti-intellectualism is not dependent upon one's own personal intelligence, in this case, the social text editors, but merely the refusal to examine their preferred position even-handedly and without bias. I would say, like, you would win all the arguments. You would always carry the day in the great debate community once you point out the other person's bias within their premise that they put forward, their argument that they put forward. Anti-intellectualism is best understood as a reaction against an obvious fact. That goes back to the Dreyfus Affair. But importantly, a particular fact of our shared reality that is rejected in unscientific circles. What did I mean by unscientific circles? Really, I think of my friend Pyong, that I would count, justice, judiciary as a scientific circle, not for the fact that, justice is any sort of gauzy word, but there's some applicable method that you can see behind justice. There is some method that we can derive from the what we consider as a group, as a consensus, fair play, what is legal. Number 3, anti-intellectualism has been proven an effective tool for manipulating large portions of our modern society. That goes back to Nazi propaganda, simply due to its appeal to bigotry and groupthink. Okay, well, the anti-Semitic riots that they had for the Dreyfus Affair, the efforts that the Nazis put in to move the masses. We see a phenomenon in our community of the flat earthers growing. It has some sort of, what would you say? It does have a proven way of bringing people together through either bigotry or some sort of groupthink, believing that it has a validity. I'll go ahead and read that to some commentary next. Commentary germane to our community. Number 1, the presuppositional argument. I believe that's long gone, but it's, making some of its rounds, especially with Darwin's deity, that individual coming back. This attacks the science method rather than dealing with the hard evidence for it rightly. That's what I noticed about the presuppositional argument. Have you noticed when a question is asked to the presuppositionalist, it's usually answered with a question about the method itself. It's never any explanation of the evidence, or it's some sort of word salad evasion. My problem, that I'm sure of all of my listeners know who've familiar with me for a while, is I have a great problem with philosophy and its word games. It seems like it's only put to the use to, elude any sort of fact finding, any sort of agreement, consensus upon how our reality works. Let me get to point 2. Creationism. This I see as a reaction against the evidence produced by science and technology, because science and technology contradicts sacred scripture, specifically the origin tales. For example, in the Holy Bible. I often tell to the Bible believer, to the Christian, that if they, if in some way that the Bible condoned evolution, that they would have no problem with it. But the problem that they have is that a very plausible explanation that's backed by science has been given for the origins that completely contradicts sacred scripture, which, I may say happened in 1850s, 30s, early. Okay, number 3, the flat earthers, a reaction against the authority of science and technology, because science and technology contradicts the fading principles of divinity, magic, worship, and mysticism. A reaction against the authority of science and technology. The flat earthers we have here, if you've noticed, what is the basis for the flat earth? I mean, originally it was just the way that they saw the earth. I mean, before science and method, even back then, I think of that Egyptian who proved that the earth was round. It's sort of like the basis of it is totally in whatever fiat, whatever providence says that this is the way that the earth is, that the way that the makeup of our planet is. It resides totally in an age of thinking that has gone to the wayside, yet is coming back in our age of the internet. Why is that? Because it brings people together for, the last, I won't get to them. Let me get to number 4, conspiracy theory. A preferred tactic for the anti-intellectualism to propagate within modern societies via its media. Okay, we endure a lot of conspiracy theory within our community, because it's the only available tactic, and there's no science to conspiracy theory that they can successfully bring forward that hasn't been disproven by actual science. We have the 9/11 truthers, we have the Illuminati running hip hop, so forth. That's what I'm talking about. And then get to number 5, religion cults and Google Hangouts. These are the bastions left for those groups to coalesce around biased ideas that are unscientific and unreal. There will come a time when there won't be any more Google Hangouts, and there probably won't be any more religion and cults, because the utility of these things are growing less and less. The only utility I see to religion is only for political purposes. Really, religion now is some sort of societal statement by anti-intellectuals who are unwilling to embrace the truth of how our reality works. Yes, we have descended from great apes. Yes, we live on a round planet. Yes, we're in no privileged position in the entire universe. And yes, there is no God. What happens is that there is a preference that the believer is already affixed to, than looking at their belief even-handedly through science, which I find always too evident to the believer. Well, let me get back. You could tell I'm not used to talking at length like some people, my heroes like G-Man, but just thank you for listening to the show. I will open up the room to participants in a bit, but let me see if I can do an epilogue of everything I discussed, see if I can bring it together in a dovetail. Well, we have intellectuals, we have an intelligentsia that we can look upon, be it in, right now we have a much wider, what intelligentsia means is, the written word, knowledgeable about information systems, somebody who does not have a disdain for a proven fact within our reality, things that can be proven scientifically, things that we know that are actual. That is the intelligentsia that I'm talking about today in our present. And what anti-intellectual means is, basically one is presented with things that there's, how can I say this? I guess, because scientific wants to adhere to theories. I want to say, because irrefutable evidence, the earth is round, so forth, gravity exists, that they choose to believe does not have any water. There's some sort of conspiracy theory, which is their tactic to believing that it doesn't hold any merit. How do you deal with these people in our community? Well, there's a level of seriousness that you can affix to Google Hangouts. There's a utility that you can use one way or another. But just to know, if you need to prove your point, you just need to indicate their bias, whatever preference they hold. They hold to the idea that most things that the media presents, the hoax, that the government's against us, or that God exists. These things are just, what would you say? You may present the scientific evidence to the contrary. The idea for them to affix themselves, or how can I say, not affix, that's a bad word, to at least enlighten themselves to what is actual within our reality, is always entirely up to them. But you may always, as I'm sure it's still in the fair play, is present the other end of the argument. I will go ahead and right now at this point take a little break and put the link in the public outside. Once again, Happy New Year. And just as a quick thank you to my friend Shani for Christ, who thanked me in her video earlier today. Well, let me go ahead and take a quick break. Hold on. Hey, welcome to the show.
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Yes.
You've been reading a lot of that lately?
Nah, it's been 20 years since I've focused on such things.
How have you been? Happy New Year.
Oh man, it's just sucked. It's been a living hell. It's been great. It's been great.
Been doing a lot of hangs?
Oh yeah, premium hangs of new heights of breathtaking contemplation, tears, belly laughs. Oh, the extremes, Bunto.
Who's been in the, has Patrick or the usual suspects or different people?
Some of the usual suspects, yes, and interacting in new ways with the usual suspects. You know, just about the time you got somebody figured out, they're just plain new, or a human being's very complex, easy to underestimate. These rascals.
All right.
Yes.
You know, the theists like Darwin's deity, or people like Patman, I mean, or Sugar.
Yes.
I mean, are these the people coming, or is this like totally new people even hanging out, like Luke Dog and
a mix, a good mix, a few newbies. You know, after I found myself reaching a saturation point of interacting with people, and so that in some ways I've got, I don't know, maybe a couple of score of people that I interact with, and the newbies are slow to be accommodated.
okay.
I've noticed. I don't know why, but I've heard of this.
They've been talking about. Okay, go ahead.
I've heard of the same phenomena in platoons in war. That, you know, once one reaches a saturation point of associates, that the new people coming in are not bonded with as quickly as the ones that you've already bonded with. But, yes.
I'm sure that's true. Interesting. Okay, but I was going to say, okay, there's this new person I heard about. His name is Grim V. Have you heard of
Yeah.
him?
Oh yes, Grim. He's a unique and interesting man. He is a great musician, a great singer. He
Wow.
does hold some controversial beliefs, and I think he might have. He says shocking things sometimes, naughty, shocking things. But
All
yes, I
right.
I know our Grim. Yes,
With just the baseline, is he an atheist or a theist or what?
I'm not really sure what beliefs he currently holds. He does seem to
Wow.
be a proclaimer of what he sees to be good. I think he's focused on vaccinations and maybe a couple of other items, I think.
All
But
right, but you weren't able to discern if he was a kneeler or he was a God hater?
no, no, I think he declared agnosticism, if my memory
Oh,
serves, but it's been a while.
an agnostic. I see. All righty, and the MK, is he going on an upward trajectory or is he like leveled?
Hard to
Hey,
say. Certainly seems to be. I don't know if he's planed out, but he's up there. Excuse me.
hey, Stephen, welcome to the show. Stephen, you know my friend St. Tommy?
Hey.
Tommy, this is Stephen.
Hello, sir.
Oh, hello. Hey, how are you going?
How have you been?
Oh, busy. Been sorting out work stuff, so
And well,
yeah.
congratulations on the job.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I needed it. Take some pressure off anyway. So,
It's in the medical field?
caring at
Oh,
an aged
yeah.
care place. Yeah, so sort of.
Well, I just gave a presentation on anti-intellectualism. But what do you gentlemen think the views are? I mean, do you have a particular definition?
Uh, anti-intellectualism to me would be anyone that doesn't question anything, doesn't ask questions, doesn't show initiative. Basically, anyone that that thinks they know everything and refuses to listen or learn anything new. That would be. That's how I'd define it. I don't know
Okay.
how anyone else would.
Back when I was in community college studying to be a psychotherapist, I was taught about a defense mechanism known as intellectualization. And it was the phenomena of overcomplicating something in a way to handle it or to digest it. So perhaps there is some positive view or positive merit to anti-intellectualism if intellectualism overcomplicates things just for the sake of fluff and garnish and polish. Uh,
Okay. Well, let's say there's an intellectualism that is steeped in bias. Don't you feel it's, worth fighting against, revealing its bias?
yes.
You know who I think overcomplicates things all the time? People like Stephen Hawking and
No.
all those astrophysicists. I know you might say why, because if you listen to their explanations about black holes and things like that, you think to yourself, I'm pretty sure it's a little more simple than that. Like, I don't think it's
Really?
as complicated as you make it out to be.
Okay. Water is simple or not?
Water?
Water.
Yeah.
Water is water, or water is H2O in a
Yeah, I was going to say it's
particular
H2O. That's all it comes as.
scientific,
So.
as far as scientific methodology to ascertain the different types of water, the different,
Mm.
states that it can be in. I really don't fault Hawking's for, maybe his, would you say, windiness about the nature of black holes or his, theory of
Yeah.
it.
Well, see, this is the thing that gets me. See, okay, we all know in the universe there's constants and there's certain rules that cannot be changed because
All
that's
right.
just how everything works, right? Well, he goes and all those astrophysicists say that black holes are an empty void with almost like, well, not with an infinite mass, but just with a large mass. Now, you can't have an empty void and a mass at the same time. It doesn't matter. It's
Well,
either one or the same, or one or it's one or something else. So it doesn't really work.
I
So
would dare say, Stephen, that don't think there's a solid consensus to the nature of black holes. I mean, you say all of them, would
well,
you say that?
most of them will say that though. They'll say it's an empty void in space, and that's why there's like a big dip. But then I think, see, what I think is it's just a large mass. And now I'm probably wrong, and I'm fair enough, I'm wrong. But to me, it makes more sense that they're a large mass and that they're like, you just imagine an enormous planet or a gaseous planet type thing. So they're just a great big mass in the middle of wherever they are, and then basically it's so large that it has such a large gravity field that it basically pulls everything in around it. But because that's how I view it. But like I said, I'm probably wrong.
But yet you won't.
Wrong.
Would you ever deny that they existed, even though we found evidence? And
oh no, of course not. We know they exist.
The anti-intellectual, we have a certain brand of anti-intellectual here in our community called the flat earthers that don't believe that we've even put satellites into space. Have you encountered any of these, Stephen?
I've seen them on YouTube. I've left comments. They've never replied. So they're not really the type to actually reply to anything you say.
Okay. Well, welcome to the show, Bro Joe. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing excellent, thank you.
Feeling better, coming off a flu?
Yeah, I just got kind of like, residual shit in my system, But
okay.
Yeah.
You encounter somebody in Google Hangouts that says the flus don't exist. It's just the psychosomatic system of the mind. I mean, how would you respond to the anti-intellectuals?
That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you could say that's ridiculous, but I mean, what would you use to, would you counter the argument by saying, well, why would we have medicines and vaccines against, such?
You're telling me there are people out there who actually think the flu is just
I'm
an
sure,
illusion?
probably.
It's something in your mind. I'm not really sick. It's just my mind.
Well, we have something in religion called Christian Scientists that believe that, you can pray afflictions away. I mean, instead of taking medicine, just use the power of prayer. Well, I mean, how is that anyway intellectual in your? Is there any method behind that you can see?
But behind what they believe, their method? Is that what you're
Behind
asking?
using prayer to heal your cold.
Well, they're taking it by faith, in the Bible. I understand that they're taking certain scriptures. You lay the hand on the sick and that kind of thing, and they shall be healed. I understand Jehovah's Witnesses won't allow for like blood transfusions. I think that,
okay.
But I think it's really that you're talking about a real fringe group of Christianity.
Okay. Well, we also have these things called anti-vaxxers that make a lot of noise. I mean, what I'm really getting at, the meta of this question is, how do you, Brojo and all our participants here, approach anti-intellectualism? Do you just say that's ridiculous and, ignore the person, or do you take pains to explain to them how our reality actually is?
I wouldn't.
Don't.
I take pains. I take pains.
Really?
I try not to trigger them. They're easily triggered. Flat Earth, let's say. Let's take Flat Earth.
Flat Earth.
Try not to trigger them. Try not to directly refute them. I have given up on logical front-end confrontation. Forget about it. It's not going to work. One of my chief methods is to appeal to their own vision of their own limitations. Some flat earthers esteem their current understanding as perfect, perfect in every way, and to appeal to them to loosen up a little bit. That they don't have to understand reality perfectly, that it's okay. That's my main strategy.
Now, Saint, can I ask you this? Is it worthwhile to walk halfway into the madness in order to get some sort of constructive outcome from a conversation with an anti-intellectual?
Yes, at times, if it's timely, if it's fun.
Find some common ground.
I find if it's something they want to talk about, then yes, you can have a proper conversation with them. But if it's about something that they adamantly oppose, then no, you can't have a proper conversation. So it's better to divert the conversation to something that they're prepared to talk about, because
that's a very good point, Stephen.
Yeah, you won't get anywhere with, and you know what? It's but as I say, you can't catch more bees with you catch more bees with honey. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
More flies with honey.
Well, you can predict you can predict an interaction if you front end refute somebody with such a crystallized, rigid,
Right.
you
Bias.
predict where it goes, where it's going to go. They have 1,001 facts, and they are very emotionally dedicated to every one of them. And if you refute one, there's 999 and a half more that they'll submit to you.
I'm going to treat flat Earth society like another religion. You know, you want to believe that, fine, despite the facts. Just don't be telling us we're going to have to change our maps, or that you want to teach in school. Or
That's a good point. Okay, we enjoy a society, gentlemen here, where we have, a much better sense of racial equality, racial harmony. And you remember in the past that there was like specious ideas of the inferiority of other races, right? Now, that was the anti-intellectual position, right? That they would come up with, either biblical sacred scripture references saying for the, inferiority of the other races, or they'd come up with specious science for it. I mean, would you guys go out of your way nowadays if you were heard of somebody in our own community, espousing that viewpoint? Anti-progressiveness, that's what I'm really getting at.
Normally, I wouldn't, because I think the more attention you give these people,
Right.
the more other people will listen. But then at the other token, we need to fix those problems with society, and this is things we can all do as individuals. Let's try and teach other people how we're all the same, how in our own rights we're all equals and we're all the same. So, in that sense, that's when I would go, okay.
And Stephen makes a good point. And the more you give this attention, to me, it's like it's a phenomenon here. How this flat Earth movement is taking such.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's amusing.
Some people say it's
yeah.
the internet.
Yeah.
At Earth, because of the internet.
And then a lot of people just pose. They're just doing it for the lulz.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a wonder to behold another mind who sincerely believes such things and vigorously, zealously promotes reason and facts and figures and rationale.
Okay, that's a good point. Was there a psychological basis behind what MG Pillbox?
Absolutely there is. It's not just arbitrarily crystallized. It has a function. Flat Earthism has a function, and it helps.
All right, Deidre. Okay, what do you think he's to gain from espousing?
Displacement of existential fear. It's a freaky thing to be alive, and one can somehow, without realizing it, in spite of one's refined or deep intellect, somehow many fears can be somehow parked and crystallized into a series of thoughts. Flat Earthism coupled with anti-NASA, coupled with JFK blown away.
Right. Conspiracy theory. Okay, well, let me welcome Deidre to our show. Thanks for coming tonight, honey.
Hey.
We're talking about anti-intellectualism. What do you think it is? What is it to you?
Fear.
Fear.
It's fear. It's afraid to be challenged, afraid that whatever you hold dear might get taken away.
Bias.
Afraid, bias, fear, a fear of not being good enough, not being smart enough. There's a lot of fear.
Okay, we're talking specifically right now about flat eartherism, and we're using MG, studying, trying to examine him. Do you think there's a psychological basis for what he's doing, or is it
I don't think he actually believes that. I don't actually think he believes the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I'm not sure with MG Pillbox, but I know some of the others do.
Some of the others do. Why? I mean, what's to gain from?
I think there's a couple things that happen. I'll have to cite where I read this, but there has been some people that have been looking into why people are into conspiracy theories in particular.
All right.
And a lot of it has to do. See, I used to think, wow, how scary would it be to think that everybody's working against you? Like NASA, all the governments, all the scientists are all in cahoots, and they're all working against you to lie. for an
Right.
agenda, some secret Illuminati agenda or whatever, one world government or whatever they imagine, right? That's happening.
Sure.
But for flat earthers, one thing that, it does do, well, with any conspiracy theory, is they say that it pumps up their ego.
Right.
So that they say, I have special knowledge that you don't have. Right?
Do you want to know? Do you want to know something interesting about all of those people as well? They don't. It's proven also that they don't want anyone to answer their conspiracy. They don't want an answer to even.
They don't want a
exist.
resolution to the conspiracy.
Yeah. Because they can make money off it. Like, they can make money off their conspiracy. So that's why, like, particularly with the alien ones as well, like, they don't want people to go, oh, well, actually, it turned out this is what it was. And that they sort of go, well, no, it can't be. And it's like, well, yes, it can be. Like, so, I mean, the ancient alien ones is a real good example of that. That dude probably made a lot of money off what he did, selling his rubbish to the History Channel, and
Right.
got famous. But even though it's proven beyond a doubt, like, there's even a 3-hour YouTube documentary or something of someone debunking the whole
Yeah,
thing.
taking it piece by
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
there are several cookies. One of them is ego boost. I have the
Right.
special knowledge. Another one is financial perks. You get those residuals or those penny a hit for whatever it is, your fame, your specialty, your stick, your little dance that you do. One gets to be known by one's uniform and the glamour and the feathers and the unique of one's uniform. Yes.
What are we really looking for in our community when we have our conversations? Are we just looking for learning stuff, or are we just looking, to bond with people, camaraderie?
Anything that works.
Anything that works.
Yeah, anything that's practical, that's helpful. Anything you can empathize with. Yeah, anything that's practical.
It's hard not to. I agree with that a lot. What do you think, Deidre? I mean, are you looking for something that's totally eluded you, that the Earth is flat, or are you looking just to meet people and have a social interaction with them?
I like to understand people, and I like to understand why people believe what they do, and I actually find particularly atheists fascinating. So that kind of what brought me to the great debate community. The flat Earth stuff I don't really find fascinating as much as it's almost really makes me want to just punch my monitor.
Comedic.
Yeah, I don't even think it's funny anyway, because a lot of these people attach it to theology, and then I get really frustrated and I'm like, stop breaking Christianity. But but I know to you it's like all nonsense, right? Like it's like it's all nonsense. It's all part of the same thing. But for me, I there was a time when Christians were Christian humanists. There was a time when Christians loved art, and they loved learning, and they loved writing. And whatever is happening in evangelical America about like this anti-intellectual, let's be terrified of science, let's be terrified of writing and stuff like that, like I just think, I don't know, it needs to stop. I think it's really sad.
Okay, which one would, just asking, all our participants, which one is bigger right now in your estimation in the community? Evolution denial or flat eartherism? Or are they both?
Evolution denial.
That'd be, evolution denial. That'd be a long way ahead of anything else. There's still a lot of people that really don't agree with that, and I just don't understand it.
Are they successful with evolution denial?
No, they're not successful. They're not convincing new people about what they're doing, but it's just constantly putting out this information, this misinformation. They're almost propagandaing it in their own right. So, yeah.
Well, what do you think, Deidre? Is it propaganda or is
Absolutely, right? And propaganda is sort of a gray, neutral thing, right? Like propaganda is either good or bad; it doesn't really matter. But it's like sort of a forceful, compelling.
For example, Nephilim wants to establish the validity of his position by ignoring other parts of evidence, facets, just bringing out, the outliers, the frauds that have taken place in, evolution theory throughout the years. It's sort of like he has a mission in that, evolution's all wrong just by cherry picking, out of the mountains of evidence, he's going to pick, the time when the scientists failed.
Well, the scientists didn't fail with evolution. That's proven
Well, I think
beyond
of
a
like the
doubt.
Piltdown man, the frauds. That's what I'm trying to get
Well,
at it.
Oh, you
Or
mean the
the
scientific frauds, or the
yeah,
ones that have made mistakes? But that's the thing
the
with
evolutionary
learning. You,
denier likes to pick, what
yeah,
was the failings of evolution, in the
Right.
early
yeah,
part,
The
and
thing, the
then
thing with science, though, is it's not dogmatic, or at least it's not supposed to
right,
be. Now, I would argue that there are some science culture that is dogmatic, but that's a whole
oh,
nother
it
thing.
is. That's
But
that's more about keeping your job because
right,
you're bringing new theories or new hypotheses to the table. If it's too quacky, like if it's too far out there, people tend to go, oh no, because even if they are right, you know, it's not. It's too hard because they've been spouting the. It's actually it's. I got an interesting story. If
all right,
real quick. Okay, so this is basically one of the first health people, like one of the first doctors. His name was, I think it was Galileo or Galleon or something like that. I think it was
Hello.
Galleon. Anyways,
Kelly.
it's just a while back. I this thing. This guy, basically, he was good at being a doctor, but he was from from the ancient times. And at the time, people didn't want to question what he said, even though he was wrong,
All
because
right.
they all assumed he was right. They all taught that he was right. So no one ever
Bias.
wanted to question it, even though people knew, even though it was coming out that yeah, things are basically proving that
Leech's work,
what he
right?
knew, yeah, what he knew, was that sort of time. So basically, it took about 1,000 years after this guy wrote a book on health to sort of replace it. So I mean, it sort of goes like that. I think that's what I was trying to get at. That people tend to, hey, this
Yeah,
guy's
there's a
right.
tritium that needs to be
Yeah,
changed. Like I think of plate
yeah.
tectonics. That was one of our recent ones where people believed that the continents were absolutely fixed. Until after World War II, with the invention of sonar, we established the fact that these things are drifting all over the globe.
Mm.
Okay, let me ask everyone here: do you think Nephilim can do what he's doing? The effect of like bringing doubt about evolution without it being propaganda, merely by accepting the fact that evolution exists. I mean, what can he do in his position to make it legitimate? Anything?
No, nothing.
mm,
he can
Nothing.
I
come clean. He
that's
can
a good
come
question.
clean. The one of the side issues, the pink elephant side issue in the living room, is that creation science or young Earth scientific methodology or scientific surmisings is married with somehow with this thing called Genesis, this ancient
Mm.
writing called Genesis, and
Mm.
so it's
Sacred
very
scripture.
emotionally attached on both sides. This book called Genesis Nephilim is emotionally driven, not by the science, but by somehow having to do with his beliefs he holds in this book. If he were to unmarry it from the book, that he that's his real shtick, is
Right.
promoting the book and shoehorning things in. There are no unbiased journalists. It's just the way it is. If he were to unmarry it from his commitment to promoting the book and or at least come clean with it, that would perhaps have his scientific proposals considered with a little bit more sincerity.
Okay. Let
Yes.
me ask the Christians here: is biblical inerrancy a dead letter? I mean, what we're
Well,
talking about right now is bias. Elimination of bias, but
okay,
claiming that.
okay. I mean, I want to go for a couple things if that's cool.
All right, go ahead.
One thing to go right before the crud. I lost my thought, and it was kind of. I was going to try to connect it together. Oh,
It's Nephilim. Yeah.
Genesis actually can be read a few different ways, and I
Yes.
know that it sounds like I'm playing a tap dance. Dun, 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 dun. Let me obscure everything. But the reason why I point that out is not to just be like, oh yay, let's do some shady moderate Christian shit,
Apologetics.
but to actually say that the Jewish people have interpreted it multiple ways, and Genesis wasn't written till way when Moses, about when Moses was around, and we don't even know who the author is. So some people attribute it to Moses, but you know, that's debated, and it's an answer to the creation myth stories of things like Babylon and, you know, stuff like that. So it's not even like extremely firm, even in the Jewish faith. And then if you fast forward with the inerrancy, well then my question is, what do you mean by inerrancy? Are you talking about language defects, or are you talking about not God inspired?
Right. Okay. Well, let's say Bible literally, the literal Bible. You've indicated that the Jews don't necessarily believe that that's an actual literal story of how the origins of this world was. But the Christian, on the hand, the fundamentalists would have you believe that the Bible is completely inerrant and must be accepted literally, or all of it, of course.
Not every Christian.
Oh, well, I'm talking about the fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, we've progressed since, farther from the, what do you call it, 19th century outlook of fundamentalist Christianity to, science and technology now. I mean, will people like Nephilim see that there's no use to having such a bias towards a literal Bible?
I don't think anything's going to change Neff's mind at this point.
Yeah.
You might change other younger people, but at this point, I think that Neff's pretty much solid and he's not going to move.
Would you say that the majority of churches now in Christianity are progressive as far as origins?
No, it seems like, and I hate saying this because it makes me kind of, in all honesty, tipping my hand, I think it makes me a little uncomfortable that there's so much differences, but it seems like regionally, culture is affecting how you read the Bible and how you perceive it. And a lot of people are looking at the Bible through whatever their cultural lens is. And right now, I would say progressivism happens in California, and it happens in New York, and it happens in Maine, and it happens...
but in the Bible Belt, there's a concerted anti-intellectualism.
I honestly, in Texas and in the South, yeah, I see it as anti-intellectual largely.
Okay. Anyone?
I just wanted to ask, what's this Nephilim guy doing anyway? Because I don't really know. So, I'm just curious as to. So, what? Just a quick
He's the community's foremost evolution denier that I know of, and he has a hangout. He used to have a lot of hangouts. He used to almost be every other day. Wouldn't you say, Deidre? And not so much nowadays, but when he's on, it's concerning evolution denial.
Why is it so important to him? Why is this the
very
most
good question?
Why
is it so important?
I have asked this, right? I've asked this quite a bit. I don't think evolution's a hill to die on. I don't think all of Christianity weight bears on whether or not evolution is true or not. But there are some of the fundamentalists here that really do, and I can tell you a few different reasons why. One reason is original sin. They think that if we mess with how Adam and Eve came to be, then that fouls up original sin. Other people think that they're afraid to say, well, is that what really God meant to say, or is that really how it went down? They're afraid to explore maybe the type of literature it is, or why it was written a certain way, and they just think it would be easier, it'd be more faithful. You'd be a better Christian, you'd be more hardcore if you bit the bullet and you took it as it reads plainly without ever trying to look into, well, what's really being said here, or
studying it.
Yeah.
Okay, a Christian like Shani for Christ espouses that permission just to accept it in face value.
I don't know what Shani does.
I've heard her many a time just tell me that, just to accept what the Bible's telling me.
There may be many different ways to collectively behold the many different precepts in that book or that translation called the Bible, which is actually nothing in particular. There are many translations, many versions, many languages. But there may be many ways to collectively behold all the different precepts and the individual precepts, many different levels to it. I submit for your consideration. And it's not so black and white, maybe, although some would suggest that it is precisely that. Case closed.
Okay.
I'm getting a bit of a picture here. So, okay, so he's very literal, and it's important to him because if somebody said that evolution was true, then they're saying that the Bible is false, even though there's
Right.
no correlation there. It's just something he's invented in his own mind.
It's got to be true. It's got to be.
If you read it plainly, right, I can see where the panic is, right? Like, if you read it plainly and go, God created the earth in 6 days, end of story.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
because God said it, that's what it is. You know, and if I say anything different, I'm sinning. You know, I can see where it comes from.
But the funny thing, sorry to interrupt, the funny thing about the whole scenario is God is like this, like basically knows everything and he knows how to make things work. Why wouldn't he put in something like evolution as a tool
That's a very good
for
point.
any species to survive? Because he wants his species to live on. So he's gone, right, I'm gonna put this tool in place.
Surely he's not a prankster.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't see even like evolution. 9 times out of 10, it'll be a neutral change or a neutral mutation. Only like one, and 1 out of those 9 will be a negative effect at least. So you're more likely to see more negative effects than you are positive. And only one time will you ever see like this is like a benefit to that particular thing. And a lot of evolution, that's all it is. It just weeds out the bad mutations and then brings in the good ones that basically don't ultimately change something really physically, but they might say give you a tolerance to sundown.
Thanks, Steve. Well, let me dovetail in here. Okay, we understand that evolution is much more complex than what Scripture ever indicated, right? But we do encounter these Roy Montero types that want to say, do you believe in God? Yes, no. They want to believe, like Gigi was saying earlier, that things are in a black and white type of perspective.
It's God in a box.
Right. That, there's a flow chart of existence. Yes, no. Do you believe in God? Or are you going to hell, right? What is the use to that to somebody who chooses not to be an anti-intellectual? I mean, can you deal, like, if we lived in a society that was based that way, I mean, is there any way that we could progress intellectually if we already know what our conclusions are supposed to be? Anyone?
Yes, we do it all the time. It's compartmentalized.
We do it all the time.
Yeah. Such considerations are very limited in actual frequency of a human being in what they consider in a given day. Many people never consider the God question or the evolution question in a whole month. They go a whole month without even thinking about it. They just live, play soccer, whatever it is they do. So yes, communities or our society, let's say our local state or precinct, can develop intellectually with excellence, regardless of certain compartments or sub-considerations of the population. So yeah, we can grow.
Okay. I always said that Roy Montero was like the worst evangelist I've ever seen in my life because he adhered to this methodology where yes, no from the beginning. It's just, there's some sort of flow chart that you follow towards, achieving, being on God's team. I mean, does that work, Deidre? I mean, just having some sort of flow chart to, yes, no, black and white.
I think that the creator of the universe that I believe that exists, right? And then I take on faith who he is, and I say that he's Yahweh.
Sure, that's you
and
personally,
Jesus,
but
right? I think the creator of the universe. Hang on, the creator of the universe. It can no way be put into a slim little box of yes, no, either or. I'm sorry, but I'm not saying that he could be contradictory. I'm not saying like defy everything that's logical, but I just mean I don't think it's that simple. And Roy likes to make it so simple that you're like two, right?
Okay. Is there any way that if you really are interested in evangelism, to improve it by not being biased, or is that like just dead letter from the beginning,
well, to
to accept the fact, hey, there might not be a God, but I'd like you to believe in it.
To evangelize just means to share the good news. That's all he's doing. He's sharing the good news.
Well, the goal is to get people on the Christian team, right?
To share the good news.
Just curious. I mean, why is it so important that God is this being that can't make mistakes? I mean, he's a living organism like we are, so therefore he can make mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes.
Is God an organism?
That's what I mean.
It's part of being human. I mean, you wouldn't learn anything if you didn't make mistakes. If we didn't make mistakes, we would never correct ourselves. So why wouldn't God do the same thing?
There is a scripture that says God repented. In other words, God experienced a change of mind, which is a conundrum, being that God's reputation is omniscient, omnipotent,
immutable,
and possesses foreknowledge. It's a conundrum. How could he experience a change of mind if indeed he was omniscient and sported foreknowledge?
So
a contemplation.
So basically, using what you said and going with this is where I was going with it, basically about changing evangelism to suit a more modern society. In my mind, if they just said, look, God can make mistakes too, kind of thing, but there would be that would give them the leniency to sort of change and adapt to accept new ideas, I think. And it would also improve their own understanding of where they belong in the world and all that type of thing. That was all I was going with it.
Okay, Deidre, would that be a fail for Christianity as a religion to admit fallibility, that God could fail?
I don't see, fail at what? I mean, who's going to hold God to a standard? If God's God, like, who's he letting down? Us, I guess? I mean...
The problem right now with religion is that it's immersed in bias towards its own correctness. And there's no way we can test it. It won't allow itself to any sort of falsifiable ideas. So I was just suggesting that perhaps we can improve religion by allowing it to be examined even-handedly. Or would that destroy religion?
Do you know what?
Excuse me.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, what also could be done with that as well, if we're encompassing all religion, is I've always thought the Muslim religion needs to be modernized. I think that it's very. I think it's. I think that's. Like, honestly, I think that's the one religion in the world that has really, really fudged it up. And I don't know how they keep getting followers, but. Well, the Catholic Church did it. The Catholic Church did it, so I don't see why the Muslim people can't. It's
okay. The Catholic Church reformed itself because it was steeped in corruption.
Yeah. So why can't? Well, isn't Islam? Isn't like you could turn around and say that all those leaders all have political agendas. They're all trying to convince young people to hurt other people in those really messed up countries. Obviously. When they get away from it, they're away from it, so they're not a part of that anymore. But it is
okay. Just to get practical, let's say that we realize that some Islamic adherents will, for no reason except to please their God, do a violent act against completely innocent people. All right.
Man, all you guys really swallowed up the propaganda, have you?
Well, how am I wrong? Tell me. I mean, just today.
You got 1 billion Muslims in the world, and there's such a small percentage are terrorists.
Well,
yes.
Okay. Daily occurrences of violence perpetrated by Islamic fanatics, what have you. How does one explain
daily
that?
Violence perpetrated by U.S.? One man's freedom fighter is like another man's terrorist.
Okay,
now,
so now we're going to have
defending
equivocations, right? All right. Today in Philadelphia, a guy went and randomly shot a police officer and did it in the name of Islam. Is that fixable, Bro Joe?
Yeah, it would take a while.
But it should
what
happen.
What are your suggestions?
Right?
Well, I'm saying some parts of the Islamic religion needs to go through a reformation, just like pretty much like the Christian church did.
Explain to me this reformation, guys. What occurs during the Reformation?
Okay, as far as I know, if I can get the ball rolling, as far as I know, basically they're going to look at things that have gone wrong, like with this using Islam as a violent excuse, which is obviously
Right.
that's all they're doing. Even though we know that 99.9% of them won't do that, but there is the percentage that will.
There's
And the
this percentage that believe they're pleasing
Yeah.
Allah by committing a violent act.
Yeah. So, I
They're
would,
believing someone else who told them that.
All right, so that's the first thing, an angle, a vector that you can approach to remedy, right, Brojo? There's someone else who's saying that you please God by destroying, by ruining somebody's life, right? An innocent person's life.
You got these very charismatic leaders who are, have a lot of influence on especially young minds. They're
Okay, so the thing is that I don't think it's quite, equal to what America, you said, U.S. servicemen, I don't see them randomly shooting people in other countries. I'm sure we'd hear
not
about
randomly, but they're
it. Okay, so
they obey
somehow
orders.
we're
They're
similar
trained to
to
obey orders.
Okay,
And-
somehow you look at our military as similar to somebody just randomly shooting an official.
No,
The other
no, I'm not
country.
saying
but
randomly.
can I just say something about America for a sec? Because
Sure.
I often see it a lot where people do hate on America for the wars, but the fact it remains, we would all be in World War III if it wasn't for America. If they didn't step up to the plate, the rest of all those other countries that that have had wars and that, they would have spilled over to other countries, and it would have gotten a lot worse, man. Like, as bad as you might say, oh, America getting involved in other wars is bad, you have to admit, without what they've done, like, who would have done what they've done? And what would have happened if they didn't?
Yes.
Like, so that's how I view
Okay,
that.
Brojo, you look at Islam as being just a beneficial force as our military presence, or is what America does to, help conflicts in other countries not
All I'm saying is
beneficial?
that it's a small percentage of the whole of Islam.
Okay, it's a
To
small
broad
percentage
brush
of the
the
whole
whole
of Islam.
religion as a terrorist religion, I think is wrong.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're not, but no one's saying that it's a terrorist religion. We're just saying that it
Well,
needs
I have a
reform.
comment here on the side.
Well,
Tommy here.
I'll just mute my mic, and whoever wants to say what they need to say, they just say it.
Well,
Okay.
You kind of generalized before, Stephen. It seemed.
Well, okay, I generalised before because there are parts of it that are quite actively hurting the world, and that's where I
Right.
think, and that's where I
Paris,
think
San Bernardino.
we can't ignore it. We can't ignore it. We can't pretend. I mean, we can. People have a go at Christians all the time, but the difference is Islam is actually hurting and killing people. Maybe not directly by meaning to, but there are parts of it that are. I mean, pretty much all of Iraq is
Openly.
under military law. So
If you catch Islam running around your neighborhood, you tell it that St. Tommy is going to whoop its ass and take all its money and take its girlfriend out and maybe even borrow its car and go to the beach.
Okay. Some
Yeah,
people,
right,
despite current events, don't want to look at Islamists and Islamic, terrorism until it strikes their own,
yeah.
was it?
Mm-hmm.
Their
What do you
own,
mean, Montel? Do you mean a Muslim country specifically targeting a non-Muslim country?
Oh, that would be a gift. No, this sort of terrorism, this sort of ideology has no state. It's just generated by religious, and then it just works on a form of like the adherent, the cell, doing random acts upon with their own volition. There's no address to remedy. There's no reformation that can take place with the state. It's just all based upon what the like Brojo said, what the adherent believes from his religious leader. I mean, yeah, if it had an address, that's what George Bush. He sold to the nation that this place had an address called Iraq,
But
and
can I just ask a question of anyone here who may disagree, or whatever, but I've often been told that Islam has a political agenda to turn everyone to Islam.
A caliphate.
And that to me, that to me sort of says that it's not really a religion anymore if it has a political agenda. It's a cult because it's trying to turn people to its way or the highway kind of thing. And that's where I think it's all gone wrong, is it's stopped becoming something about what an individual can do, and it's more about living under a certain set of laws and under a certain set of control that is outside of what they normally would do.
Is that incorrect, Lyrics?
I don't know. I mean, Western civilizations have laws, right? I mean, you can stick,
but they're not religious.
You can stick Sharia on it, dude, or you can stick federal on it, or you can stick whatever word you want to put on it. But every civilization has its own unique.
Our laws are.
But they're not intertwined with religion.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Regardless of if it's
theocratic
religion or not, it doesn't matter, dude.
It doesn't matter. Well, okay, you like to come up to the plate with no strikes on you, right? But if you come to a baseball game where the score is 10-0 from the get-go, and you already have 2 strikes on every swing of the bat, or they don't even allow you to swing the bat, you would call that in any way fair? Comparative to what we have in our society? I mean, these countries destroy LGBT. They kill Jews on sight. I mean, come on. I would say we're much more civilized.
I don't know. Everyone kills everyone, dude.
Oh, really? Everyone kills everyone.
That's correct.
What was your random violence perpetrated by in Brojo's case?
I'm not saying individually, dude, but if you're going to make a generalization about a specific culture that inflicts death and misery, you've got to realize.
A generalization. I'll make an observation. How's that? That I see a lot of Islamic-based violence in today's world.
Say that again?
I make an observation, just not a generalization, but the observation that there is Islamic-based violence today.
Yes, I could buy that. Just like the Third Reich back in the 40s, the 30s. Yeah, it's happening.
Except the Third Reich had an address.
Yeah, it did. And it had very real individuals.
Had a leader.
Yeah, very real individuals of that group think.
Okay, there's the old, after our towers were destroyed and, the next day the guy flew out the Osama bin Ladens from America, and then that Friday he came on and said religion is a religion of peace. Islam is a religion of peace. That's still flying for you, Lyrics, Brojo, Tommy?
I don't think any of them are religions of peace. Right? I mean, if the idea of a particular religion is to remain inclusive and all others are not part of it, then that means that violence will eventually erupt, correct?
Okay, Brojo brought up the trope that there's only a small number of Islamic adherents doing this violence on the everyday basis. I mean, does that still work with you? Lyrics, it's just a small number.
I don't know, man. I never met him, dude. I don't know who's doing it. People on the news say one thing, and
people on the news.
Other things, dude. I got no idea.
Apparently, there's a bunch of Islamic violence going on nowadays, and okay, just to bring another case, in Germany, on New Year's Eve, there was a group of Islamic men, hundreds, they said, went around, raped a bunch of women. Did you guys hear that story?
Yeah, I have been well informed about that, but I've only heard one side, so I don't know.
Okay,
but I have
fair
seen.
enough.
And okay, for example, I know that there are Western governments which are basically going out of their way to be politically correct.
Okay,
and
going out of their way to be politically correct. Explain that, Steve, please.
Well, they're basically selling out Western values and culture and belief for to not offend or upset people from Islam, and that to me is idiotic because everyone has a right to be who they are, and to sort of go out of your way to sort of say, well, all you guys are all wrong because those people don't like it. It's bullshit. That's not an excuse. Like, for example, one of the German politicians called all the German people descendants of Nazis, and they're all going to be eradicated in the next 20 years because they'll be bred out because they're going to let all these refugees in, and that to me sort of says, hang on a minute, what about your traditional German heritage? What about the normal German people? They've done nothing wrong, and here they are getting bloody shat on by your own government.
Okay,
Like,
how about this,
does that...
Lyrics? You know, you get a lump in your throat, in your thyroid, and you go to the doctor, and he says, well, why don't you give the cancer a chance? See how it works out.
Whoa, that's...
I mean, would you accept that? I don't know if he's...
He stepped away.
Maybe he's muted.
Oh, Bunto, how
How
many Americans or people from the West have been killed from from terrorism, Islamic terrorism?
American? Well, let me see. We had like over
people in the West.
3,000 on 9/11. We've had numerous ones since then. We've had the latest was the San Bernardino shooter, and then this cop survived.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just today. I mean, so there has to be a certain amount, and like, you know, we have to hit a certain amount
And
before.
how many Iraqis do you think have been?
You know, we have to get so many lumps of
US-led
cancer before we
forces?
say, hey, let's maybe start taking care of it.
Not a real inquiry, John. It's not a real inquiry.
Why?
It was the declaration. You know very well that that number is incalculable, and also the inquiry was flawed from the get-go. Well, I won't pine it out. I don't mean to be busting your balls or anything. But it was a type of rhetorical question that outlined that it could not be answered. If I were to answer it, I would say as many as the NSA says there are. You know, that's how many have been killed by Islamic terrorists, precisely down to the very number of the source quoted. But yes.
Do we include people from the Islamic countries that have been killed by these terrorists in this?
Yeah.
Because I think that they have to be included.
What constitutes Islam, the real Islamic mindset? What constitutes that? I submit for your consideration that there is no single Islam, that it is a generalization extraordinaire. It's very much like Christianity. There is no single Christianity. It is a mindset.
I still want to know why. I still want to know why I'm asking is flawed, because from the numbers I'm seeing, you know, U.S.-led forces in Iraq killed 500,000 civilians.
I did not mean to imply that it was flawed in a black and white way. It was just it was a vague inquiry. My apologies, John.
Okay, the reason that they're killing police officers or trying to kill police officers on the street of Philadelphia is because of the civilians that we killed in Iraq, Brojo?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The reason that this guy in a white robe ran up to a cop car and opened fire is because of all the people we were trying to kill in Iraq? Is that what you're saying? Some sort of tit for tat?
Oh, I don't know his reasons.
But
he said specifically he did it in the name of Allah. He was trying to please Allah.
This is
the cop.
This is where I think it all goes wrong.
If he said that, then I guess in his mind he believes that.
Okay, San Bernardino, that was all about Iraq?
No, probably. I don't know.
When they blow up their own mosque, when they blow up their own mosque in Iraq, that's all about us? That the reason they're, you know, the Shias blowing up the Sunni mosque, that's because of us?
Suicide by religion. Kind of like suicide by cop.
Okay.
It's not because of us.
People want to demonize the United States of America.
Yes.
For what reason?
And do you really think we go into Iraq or go get Saddam Hussein? Why? Because of what? In for the cause of democracy? Do you really think that we go in there because we're trying to liberate people?
Yeah.
I mean, how we killed 500,000 of them? You really think this is the main reason we?
No, we know that it's not. We know that it's not. But the purpose is it's almost like killing two birds with one stone. Saddam Hussein was an evil man. He deserved to die. He did bad stuff to people. I mean, I can tell you stories about what I knew about Saddam Hussein that would make you sick to your stomach. Trust me, the world is better off without people like that. And okay, even though America had ulterior motives with oil, we all know that. But that doesn't exclude the fact that they were trying to do the right thing in the end. It was just that they chose the wrong. They just probably, in it probably would have been better off if they just let things play out. But
well, of course, I
that's,
would say that in my submission, we're sold a bill of goods on Iraq. But the thing is, this thing of saying that, hey, this Islamic violence, we deserve it. We get everything we get because of Iraq.
Look,
I mean, I
no,
just don't follow that thinking, bro, Joe.
I didn't say we deserve it. Did I say that?
Well,
I
you
didn't
said
say
how many
that.
people did we kill in Iraq and this thing's, to my knowledge, Stephen brought,
Well,
to my
yeah.
observation, Stephen brought up a good point. How many just
So-
Islamic people has the Islamics killed, man? They blow up their own mosques.
so you
And
didn't.
so
when
we
they
should go be the
ISIS
policemen.
ties
We should go be the policemen
detonation
of the
cords
world
around.
and impose our will on another sovereign country. I don't think
That
we would
did not
appreciate that
happen,
too
bro.
much out
Joe, if
here,
you
should we?
tried. Impose our will. We're out of Iraq now. There was, in fact,
Oh yeah, so
Stephen
you
brought up
think.
a fact.
So you think. So you think.
Well, as far as a main military, Stephen brought up a good fact that
There's still a
some.
billion-dollar embassy sitting in
Please, can I
Iraq.
finish? Stephen brought up a point that, hey, Saddam Hussein was a terrible guy, but I bring up, as a rejoinder, hey, if this guy was still alive, we wouldn't have ISIS at this moment, But the
yeah,
more
but,
important fact is this demonization of America. There's no end. I mean, it's just an open-ended, like brother, St. Tommy said. I mean, there's just no metric to it that you can the evils that America has done supposedly to the Islamic world. It doesn't allow for Joe for them to just do the horrible terroristic acts that they're doing around the world today. Sorry
There's no
to disabuse you of that
justification for
notion.
horrible acts. I'm just trying to justify any kind of horrible acts at all.
but I
But
mean, it's the fact remains. We've been dealt a set of cards. The whole world. We've all been dealt a set of cards regarding Islam, regarding all the wars and all of that. We're all in this now. We got no choice. We have to be in this. So when people say, "Oh, we should just get up and leave," or we should, how dare us, bad us, kind of thing, forever trying to do the right thing, it's too little, too late now. Now we have to deal with it. So I just sort of feel like, well, now we've been dealt these cards. Now we've got to all make adjustments, and I think that includes Islam. Islam needs to adjust to the modern world. I think that, okay, we didn't want to be in this war that we're in now, but we're there now. So now, okay, we might not have the answers right now, but I don't really see any other options on the table.
how do we take care of the Syrian refugees? We've got to take care of
Send
those
them back to Syria?
Well,
kill
some
ISIS,
people-
send them back to Syria?
Apparently, people have noticed that the Islamic states aren't taking their own in. It's just up to us, America, Germany, whoever, Iceland.
You guys are some ambitious contemplators, in my mind. You guys are solving world problems, man. I mean, you are really digging into these heavy conundrums.
The reason we had to solve the world's problems is because it's coming to our shores now. Paris is an example, San Bernardino. I mean,
so how are you doing?
Well, hopefully we'll never repeat another Iraq. We have a good, a president who's not duplicitous in office currently right now. Whether you like him or not, he's no George Bush. He won't lie this country into war.
Not how are we doing. How are you doing?
How am I doing? Fine. Brand new year. Glad to be here.
I
I got a call out from Shanny today. I was really pleased about that. Okay, Bro Joe, it's our fault, right? We should just get the hell out of the world's affairs. Any rejoinder to that, Bro Joe?
Get out of the world's affairs. No,
Well,
I'm not
yeah,
saying-
you say
I'm
that
not
apparently
saying we should be
America's
a total
like
isolationist.
International bad guy. Things that we touch turn to shit. Is that what you're saying?
Sure seems like it, Bunto.
Okay. Why are you so against American interventionists?
I'm against being in unjust wars. Okay.
Right.
I'm against our
What was the last unjust war we were in?
Why Iraq? Iraq is one more recent war that we shouldn't have went in there.
Okay, who got us into Iraq?
Bush.
Right. Who got us out of Iraq?
We're still in Iraq. There's still
Oh, we're
presence
still
in Iraq.
Yeah,
we just shipped them over there and we send them to Afghanistan or some other part of the Middle East. How many of those numbers actually came home?
Okay. how are we going to win this war that you love to complain about?
I don't love to complain about it. I'm just
Oh,
hearing
sure, saying that it
I'm
seems
just
like
addressing
America,
your
everything that
questions.
we're
I'm
doing,
addressing
we're
the
just the shit.
subject.
How many people did we kill in Iraq? Tell us how we're going to win this war on terror.
Whew. Like I said, this is a small amount of people.
Do you want to use a call out?
Call out
Yeah.
lifeline.
You need it? Okay, well, how about you, Tommy? How are we going to solve this war on terror?
One person at a time. One moment at a time.
One heart at a time.
Yeah, there it is.
Change the hearts.
Okay, so...
One refugee at a time.
Yeah, I mean, would you take in the refugee or not?
In your local district.
Well, in Texas, they took it to court to allow, to give these 6 refugees that were going to take it from serious hell, but they managed to come in. How about you, Stephen?
Perhaps,
I'm going to wind the show up.
I'm a very people call me a bit of a warmonger, so my solutions usually involve people getting killed, but my solution would be to evacuate the civilians out of the cities, or as far as they could get away, or find a safe place to hide, and basically bomb the living crap out of ISIS until they're dead.
All right.
Send in ground forces, eliminate them, secure the location. Once it's secured, make sure that you make an example out of these Islamist extremists by burying them all in pigskins and
Oh my
what have
God.
you. And then at the end of it, once the place is all secure and safe, you can send the refugees home and help them rebuild. And that's
Okay.
Isn't that Russia's plan?
That sounded like a lot like Russian, the military solution.
Isn't that what God did when he bashed all those babies back in the Old
Okay,
Testament?
the Old Testament had the military solution, right, Tommy? The Old Testament?
I think there were some. Legend has it.
The Amalekites go in there and wipe them out. And...
got all the goats, all the little bitty goats, all the little bitty babies, all the little...
Okay. So, Brojo, is there a military solution or none whatsoever that you can see for the war on terror?
The war on terror. Define this war on terror, please.
War on terror is somehow to contain Islamic fanaticism that it kills less innocent people in the West.
Okay. Well, you know what? Russia, like I was just to say, Russia has a plan. There's about 20 to 30,000 ISIS militants.
All right.
Their capital is what is it called? I think it's called Raaq, R-A-A-Q. I think it is.
I think it's
Syria.
Raqqa or something like that.
Raqqa, okay.
Yeah.
The capital. That's where they're supposed to be based, and apparently they're sending in 150,000 to go and secure this capital. That's a good start right there. Go right to the problem. That's where they are. Go ahead, wipe them out.
Okay.
If you're gonna do it right. Get the right people.
Is it important when we do that to placate the Islamic factions that we have here in the West by looking the other way when they rape the women of Germany and going on TV and saying that they're a religion of peace? Is there any use to that? Brojo?
I'm not understanding quite. Can you rephrase the question?
Is there any use to, along with a military solution, placating the Islamic factions that we have here in the West? Yeah, you can wear your burqa and your driver's license, and yeah, you can rape the women, and you can do Islamic things,
rape the women. But if you want to wear your burqa, okay, wear your burqa. I mean, that's we're supposed to be about freedom of religion here, right? And be able to.
Let's give the cancer a chance.
But once you start, inhibiting someone else's rights, then like raping someone, then of course you're crossing the line there.
Okay.
See, my understanding would be to just let normal civil justice take its place, to basically treat each case individually and deal with it on an individual basis. That way you're not targeting a group, you're just targeting the perpetrators of a crime, which is what's happened, and that's how you deal with that.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. That sounds very
that's right.
a deeper beholding of what is practical, how to practically address something that's very real. Social movements that are doing dreadful things. Yes.
Right.
One other thing, in Texas, in the district, or is it Republic, the Great Republic of, there may be many different types of refugees. Maybe there's a shortage of Syrians in that district, but perhaps there are other types of refugees which perhaps one could address one at a time if it was convenient and appropriate and timely.
Well, I notice that there's some utility to accepting immigrants because we're kicking out the hardworking immigrants here, but I hear that they captured El Chapo and we're thinking about accepting him here in our maximum security presence. So we'll take your criminal, but we'll kick out the hardworking immigrant.
You don't want El Chapo in one of your prisons. He's too rich. He's a bad man. He's too rich. He has a lot of power.
He has a lot of power, but maybe he can not escape from one of our jobs that we have here.
Guantanamo Bay is where
Send him to Gitmo. Put some use to that place.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that. It's 10 o'clock, and I just like to thank, approaching 10 o'clock, I'd just like to thank all our participants for coming to this installment of the Amoralist Escape, the Anti-Intellectual Edition. And if you have any comments, please go ahead and leave them in the comment section of the YouTube video. I'd like to wish you all a happy New Year and have a wonderful weekend. Thank all of our participants, Bro, Joe, St. Tommy, and Stephen. Take care. Have a good day.